All right, so we are going to start this particular webinar today. All right, so welcome all. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm so glad there are men on this particular session. So welcome to the Women in Trade webinar entitled The Power of Trade Empowering Women. For those who don't know me, my name is Joy Francis. I am the team lead of the trade unit at the Trinidad and Tobago Manufacturers Association. It gives me great pleasure to be the host and to be the moderator for this particular session. So let me just start off by thanking our main sponsor for this particular webinar, Nutrimix. Thank you very much and for definitely being to support this particular session. Ladies and gentlemen, by now we are familiar with many different challenges that women face today in participating in trade. And this particular session, we are going to talk about the challenges, the opportunities, the success factors. Yeah. And we are also going to look at some specific topics, really topical issues that we know that is usually that is being discussed right now in society. And so I'm really glad it's going to be a very interesting, very informative, exciting session. I just want to say that, women entrepreneurs, we all have a role to play, business persons, those who are in this public and private sector, women in public and private sector have a role to play in really allowing trade to be, we want it to be a uniting force. So at this webinar, we're going to have a distinguished panel of women giving industry insights, share trends, practices. Yeah, and I would just want to just thank them in advance for being part of this particular session. I want to also want to say hello to our friends and comrades from the region, all my Jamaican counterparts. Thank you so much for being part of this particular session. And I think this is just going to be the beginning of, where we will have continued partnership and about in terms of, in the region itself. So I'm really glad that we do have counterparts from Jamaica. So in terms of housekeeping matters, just to indicate that attendees, you are able to send questions in the chat box and also in the question and answer segment. The structure of this particular session is going to be more of a panelist. There are no PowerPoint presentations. So therefore, attendees, they could send questions anytime during the session. Yeah. And so I do encourage you to, of course, to send questions throughout the session itself. And we do also have a designated time for a question and answer segment. So let me just start off by just giving a presentation with regards to those who are our panelists and just to give you information, a short bio of who we have as our panelists. So I'm going to first start off with Miss Adana Taylor. She currently serves as the Commercial Officer to the High Commission of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago for the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. In this role, she's responsible for promoting trade and investment into Trinidad and Tobago from the EU and the UK. She is an experienced trade and international development practitioner, having served in several capacities, both in the public and private and multilateral areas. Prior to joining the Commission, she served as the manager for research and opportunities at Export TT. And I know her also too from working at Hadco, one of our major companies. And so therefore, she has a wealth of information, both in the public and private sector. The next major panelist is Ms. Gabrielle Agostani, who is currently a TTMA director. She is the Chief Operating Officer at CJA Limited. CJA is a manufacturer of soaps, oil, margarine, cosmetics made all from coconuts. She joined CJA as the product development manager, and in that portfolio, she focused her attention on rebranding the existing products and developing new product lines within the food and beauty segments. And just to say, CJA Limited has been winning a lot of awards. When TTMA have their awards show, President's Dinner and Award Show, please know CJ Limited has been a leading innovator in terms of looking at green products and even both in the food and cosmetics line. So I'm really glad that she's here. So her strong background is in strategy and operations with training from Canada and Uruguay, together with her education in international business management from the King's College London. She has been able to be instrumental in the development of the company's strategic plans, um, which entails a new performance management system and investment in a strong leadership team. So we're glad to have Miss Agostani with us. Our next panelist is Ms. Shullette Cox, who assumed the role of the president of the Jamaica Promotions Corporation, JAMPRO, in February 2023. With over 20 years of experience at JAMPRO, her visionary leadership and unwavering dedication underpin JAMPRO's mission to promote and facilitate exports and investments linkages to foster Jamaica's economic growth. In addition to leading the country's promotional programs for export and investment across multiple industries and sectors, Mrs. Cox also leads transformative national programs, including the National Competitiveness Council, the Jamaica National Board Initiative, and the Jamaica Business Gateway, all focused on enhancing Jamaica's efficiency and positioning in the global competitive landscape. So we are really glad to have Mrs. Cox with us, and this is our panelists. And so it is, it's going to be a really exciting, very much informative session. So again, thank you all for being part of this session. So I'm going to go straight into our session. And so I'm going to start off, everybody is aware tomorrow is International Women's Day. And the theme of the International Women's Day is to accelerate action. Yeah. And what was stated that this accelerate action is speaking towards dealing with gender equality. So I just want to have just some initial thoughts from the panelists. What are your thoughts with regards to this particular theme about accelerate action? Do you think that there's a lot more work to be done? Yeah. Do you feel as though that enough work is being done, and the mere fact that what is exactly should be done to really push to really accelerate women in the trading environment? So I will ask Ms. Agostani, tell me, what are your thoughts on the theme?
Sure, of course. Well, first, thanks for having me as a panelist in today's seminar. It's lovely to be here, as well as to talk about trade. And I also love the theme that we have, the power of trade empowering women. So sure, I can speak to the topic. Trade is just so important in general and globally for companies really to thrive, because you need that increase in your GDP, and that comes directly from exporting. And trade, of course, is a powerful tool for women's empowerment, and it comes from women in businesses as well as. And the best way that you talk about accelerating it is, one, of course, like what I love about today's session is really like highlighting and promoting women who are within the field of trade, and to hear a lot more about their stories and even like celebrate all of their successes that they've had within this area. So in terms of, I can speak more to the side of women within businesses, because I work in the manufacturing, as you mentioned, the food and the beauty sectors. So during the session, I'll speak more about it and like talking about what sort of challenges we have within our particular sectors, as well as how we can accelerate it. But of course, one of the biggest things as well for my take on entrepreneurs is that a lot of entrepreneurs, like say in Trinidad, might sell just locally, but of course, to grow the country and to grow your business, you need to export. And once you're exposed to more of these new markets, that in turn helps you to drive more innovation within your own business as you make it more competitive, when you get all these sort of global insights from different businesses, competitors across the world. And that will really help define your business a little more and help you with sort of exporting and growing and accelerating yourself as well as the country.
Nice. Thank you so much. I love that insight. Definitely, if we know more about the success stories of women who have been successful in trade, I think that goes a long way in really pushing or accelerating more women in the trading environment. If they see other persons doing it, then they would say other women doing it, then they say, there will be more women involved. Mrs. Cox, tell me your thoughts. What do you think about the theme this year?
I think the theme is quite appropriate. And let me first thank you as well for inviting not just me, but Jamaica to be a part of this event. And we're quite happy to share what we have to say and learn from you as well. Accelerate action. I see it as two sides of the same coin. Accelerate action for women and accelerating action by women. So in terms of for women, it's really a call to action, I think, for us as public and private sector as to assessing what else can we do to accelerate the progress that has been made by women for over the last decades. In Jamaica, we like to talk about the fact that we enjoy above average participation of women in the economy. The 2024 Gender Parity Report speaks to Jamaica ranking second in economic participation of women. And we do have almost 30% representation in government, and we have done well, but there is so much more to do. I don't want us to be in a position where we're accepting that 30% is enough. And so there is a body of work that has to be done at a policy level in governments, at a national level, regional level, and internationally to drive the normalization of women's participation in trade. And that starts from education, but also informally, how do we let women into the rooms where decisions are being made so that they can continue to influence? And then looking at it from accelerating action by women, I think of the three women on this panel, for example, and the work that each of us are doing in our own way to make sure that there is a generation beside us and after us that can benefit from women's participation in trade. There is so much that is being done by women leaders in private sector, like Gabrielle, but there's also a lot being done by women leaders in public sector. And when I look across the region, I've seen people like Pamela Coke Hamilton, who used to be the head of the Caribbean Export Development Agency, is now the head of the International Trade Council. And women like that will never forget where they're coming from. They will always lift up the women that follow them. And so I think it's that dual role that we as women have to accelerate each other, but also depending on the community in which we live to accelerate us as well.
You're beautiful. And the mere fact that, I'm glad you was able to give that example of Mrs. Pamela Cook Hamilton. We also have the CARICOM Secretary General, yeah, who is also from Belize and is a woman. So it's just for us to know that we have great examples out there which are showing that, women can definitely play a key role in the business and trading environment. Yeah. And so I think it's very important for us to take note of that. And the mere fact that we want to continue it. We want to continue to push our women to really reach, to really become more globally competitive, to become more entrepreneurs. And also we also have to look at the public sector and that role, the role that they play to really help also encourage women, to be to be part of the trading environment. So let's talk about the challenges, yeah, that we are still facing, because again, yes, we have women participating, but for somehow we still are not getting the more participation. And I often tend to indicate like a lot of those programs where you see international programs, they purposely are indicating, listen, if you want to get grants, if you want to get some sort of technical programs, it's almost like you have to make sure that a segment is attributed, that it must be women. And so clearly, sometimes when I see that, I'm getting the impression as though like women are still not given the opportunity or the chance, because if it is, it's being forced into the criteria, then something is still taking place. So that's why I wanted to let's just talk about the challenges. And so I would ask Adana, if it is that, based on the mere fact that you have worked in both public and private, what do you think are the challenges that are still being faced with women in the business environment?
Yep. Thanks for that, Joy, and thanks again for inviting us all here today to participate. So in terms of the challenges, I do think that in spite of the progress that has been made over several decades, gender bias and social norms do still exist. So women often face discrimination in male-dominated industries. For example, manufacturing, I would say, is a very heavily male-dominated industry. I know Gabby is laughing because she knows that it's true.
Yes.
And oftentimes, I mean, you're put in uncomfortable situations where you just essentially have to push through, right? In addition to that, there also exists the traditional gender roles and household responsibilities that many women still carry, in addition to having your professional life that you're carrying as well. Cultural restrictions in some countries also limit women's participation in business and in international trade as well. So I do think that although we've made several strides in equality, we still have a long way to go, and there are significant challenges that we do still face.
Right, right. I'm glad you were able to indicate about the traditional roles that we have to play. The mere fact that women, we have to, how would you say, the work-life balance, they still have to deal with that, and those factors continue to somehow inhibit our progress. And even though there have been a lot of studies where you have seen, like, when you see more women entrepreneurs, the economy tends to grow. There's more economic growth, there's more economic development. Yeah. So, Ms. Agostani, your thoughts added to what Ms. Taylor stated. What do you consider to be some of the challenges that we are facing, women?
Yeah, so I definitely agree. Following up on what Adana had just mentioned, yes. So I can just give like my personal take on it. So I've been in manufacturing for about 8 years, and I had come from like the service industry. I worked like in the financial side with strategy and operations. So when I first decided to come into manufacturing, it definitely wasn't like something that I had thought of from even high school, university. This was something that I was going to go into because naturally, like, for example, I studied sciences. So I was like, oh, I was just going to be a doctor. And I actually had studied that first in my first degree. Well, planning to get into it. But then I took a break and really kind of figured out that I wanted to go into business. But even business and science aside, that might not have led me to go into manufacturing and trade. And as Dan had mentioned, it was a bit daunting to go in the manufacturing sector because, to be honest, when I first came in, it is a bit of a male-dominated sector, and it's really because of like the factories. A lot of our factories, especially within the Caribbean, are still very manual. I mean, we have moved to semi-automated, automated systems, but I mean, it would be male-dominated because it requires a lot of males as well to carry the packaging, the finished goods, because it is very manual intensive. But coming in, I realized, I mean, I got the opportunity because the business that I work with, it's my family are shareholders within it. So it was an easy opportunity to kind of get in. But even with that, I feel like CJ has transformed in the last 8 years, where we've seen, even at the leadership level, the not just the admin, the factory has kind of been more balanced. So say maybe it was like 20, 30% women, it's definitely now more than 50%. And a lot of, as we talk about the gender roles, stereotypically, a lot of women might have gone into HR, marketing, sales, different areas of that. But we've seen so much change as well. There's a lot of women over the last like 20, 30 years have been studying engineering, getting into logistics, procurement, warehousing, production. So all of that, I think it stems from like as well what you study, as well as the sort of stories that I mentioned earlier that you can hear from people within the industry, especially women, who might help you guide you and think that it is okay to enter these industries. Because you'd first think it is a quite rough environment, because as well with manufacturing, a lot of the manufacturers are situated like right outside the city, like in areas that might not be like the safest areas. Because to be honest, a lot of people we interview for our company, because we're situated in Laventille, are just, they might say they're interested and then they will cancel last minute because they don't want to work in the area that we are in, even being in industrial estates, different stuff like that. It's not so tempting to want to go into. But once we talk more about the stories, and then I know we're going to dive more into like innovation side, it's just really so interesting, and like it's an exciting field to be in. So I think the more we talk about it, the more we'll see that start to change over the next 10 years.
Nice, nice. And I was glad that, you give your story about the mere fact that, initially you started off with the sciences, and that's like your traditional, okay, yeah, go be a doctor, go be a lawyer. The first thing in your head was not like, can I own a business? Can I own a manufacturing company? Like that doesn't come to your head. At that point in time, it's just like, okay, let me just follow what is, normally expected at that point in time. And so it's those traditional gender roles play a major role. All right, so great. So we talk about the theme, we talk about the challenges, but I want attendees, everyone to know that we have success stories. And I want to invite Mrs. Cox to really indicate to me like what you consider to be some of these success factors for women in trade. Do you think that it has to be the policies that the government that specifically speak to make sure that women have to be part of these programs, these trade-related programs? Do you feel as though, how would you say the criteria for some of these programs must be specifically for women? What do you think could be some of the success factors that will ensure that women, will be given a equal opportunity in these particular programs, or even in business? Yeah.
I think the biggest thing for me is seeing other women do it. And I
Right.
think Gabrielle mentioned it earlier. The ability for young girls to see women on TV in their different fields talking about what they do, and knowing that, whoa, well, if this person can do it, maybe I should look at that. Walking into a university and seeing women engineers graduating makes you know that you can do it too. And that for me is one of the biggest influencing factors. Um, Recently, I spoke about something on this same topic. And the other thing is, and I think it speaks right across the Caribbean, we grew up not hearing that there are limits on what women can do. I mean, even in some instances where we might inherently think that, maybe I should be a lawyer and not an engineer, and that sort of thinking, it was never because there was anyone telling us that as a woman we can't do something in particular. And I think we take that for granted in our cultures here in the region, because there are other cultures that they're told flat out, you cannot be a part of this industry and you cannot do that. Um, the other thing that I think is a huge success factor is how women nurture each other and support each other. Yeah, I think if you look back at 30, 40 years ago, you used to talk about how women don't support each other enough. But I think a lot of that has changed. And by coming out, by telling our stories, by sharing our experiences, it makes a vast difference. Very closely linked to that is how our male counterparts support us. So, for example, I will never forget many, many years ago, I was moving from a junior position into a senior position, and a colleague that had been promoted perhaps the year before me came to me and he said, "Have you gotten your job offer?" And I said to them, "No, I haven't gotten it." And they said, "Well, as soon as you get it, tell them that you're not accepting that amount of money. No matter what they tell you, tell them that you're not accepting it."
Yeah, yeah.
And I was like, I can't do that. He's like, "No, you have to." And it was a negotiating tip that I share every single opportunity that I get. Because the fact of the matter is, if he hadn't said that to me, I would never, as a woman, think to negotiate my salary. And a lot of people look at inequity in pay, and a lot of us don't recognize the fact that it happens because men tend to be nurtured to be more bold than women. And so they will put in and say, well, I'm negotiating, this is not what I want. Women, unfortunately, tend to accept what they get. And so it creates that disparity that we see sometimes. Um, Another thing, and I think perhaps it's linked to the traditional roles of a woman at work and at home, is that we're more risk averse. So I will tell you, I enjoy a 9 to 5 job with a paycheck on the 25th of the month. And a lot of women are like that because they have roles that require them to be certain of how they're going to manage their finances, how they're going to manage their family. And so the risk that is needed to be able to launch into a business venture or to innovate and do something different and outside of the box just is not there. And so I think as soon as we start telling our stories and as soon as we start lifting each other up, both as women and as men, we can start to break down some of those traditional differences that we've seen in how men are nurtured in business and in trade versus how women are.
Very good points. I like the mere fact that you talk about women supporting women as a success factor, you know. I've seen a lot of like networks, associations. So I know in Trinidad they have the Association of Female Executives of Trinidad and Tobago. They do a lot of work in terms of, you know, pushing women in the professional field, different fields. And so, and also other networks which speaks towards really helping women and both trade and non-trade related. Yeah. And, you know, it's really good that you also talked about how, you know, the role of men in supporting women. Yeah. Really in supporting women, which, you know, which is like something really to strongly consider in terms of the mere fact that when you do have support, I think it makes you, it's more, the environment is more predictable. Yeah, the environment is more, so you feel as so that issue of risk averse comes a little more lower. I say I can really do it. You know, I have like a particular male partner or someone who is going to encourage me, support me, and so that risk adverse component just keeps on, like, you know, it comes lower in terms of when you're making decisions and whether or not if you should get into the business or or be work at a particular organization also. So I think some really so you know, I take note of that. All right, so great. So, you know, I'm really glad to hear from the panelists in terms of your thoughts on the challenges, the success factors, and to some extent, some of the opportunities. So I wanted to also directly look at Pacific topics, issues. And I want to start off by talking about e-commerce. Yeah, e-commerce and the impact of e-commerce on women. And I have this particular quote, yeah, and I will ask Ms. Taylor, you know, just for her thoughts with regards to this particular quote that I got from a particular official from UNTAD. And they were saying that women have played a key but shadow role in science, technology, and innovation, yeah, for over the past 2 centuries. But women's role, contribution, and ideas need not to be at the footholds of the technological history. The tools, the talent to tell a different story, and the truth are plentiful. It is a well-known fact that women in technology are underrepresented and poorly funded. Yeah. So I think it was a profound statement where she was stating that, you know, listen, we still are underrepresented in this particular area, technology also. And, so it speaks to us like how can we really address this? Yeah. So I will ask Ms. Taylor just to give her thoughts on that quote and of course to speak about the impact of e-commerce.
Right. So I'll speak directly to the impact of e-commerce. I think that for women-led businesses, not just in the region, but everywhere, e-commerce opens up so many doors and so many new markets for your products. And there are also many grants and facilities that are available to women-owned businesses to tap into to build your respective e-commerce platforms. So, for example, the Trinidad and Tobago Trade and Investment Promotion Agency does offer a grant that provides significant support to companies, not just women-owned companies, but male-owned as well as women-owned companies to build out their e-commerce platforms. I know that there are particular grants within the EU as well that assist women-led businesses with building out their e-commerce platforms. And e-commerce is such an integral part of export and of international trade. I mean, if you have a business now, you have to have a website, and that website should be enabled with some level of a sales platform. So that's that as far as e-commerce is concerned. Going back to your initial quote, Joy, with respect to representation of women in tech, the numbers are small, but they have grown over the years, I would say. You see a lot more young persons, young women getting into the field of tech, doing degrees in engineering, computer science, just getting into that area and understanding that there is a void to be filled there. And a lot of agencies, I mean, with DEI being rolled back in the US, I know that a lot of women would be affected by that. But there is a space in most agencies for women that would want to capitalize on opportunities in tech, I would say.
Great,
Yeah.
great. Thank you so much. And I just want to really highlight about the programs that Adana and Ms. Taylor indicated. I know we do have some female business persons online, and please note if you want to get additional information about these particular grants that are being offered, you can also contact Ms. Taylor. We will provide the contact information to attendees, and you could also contact TTMA. We could also provide you information about these particular grants. Yeah. So so I'm really glad you were able to speak on that, and the mere fact that there has been a lot of progress with women in the technological field, and of course it should be encouraged that for women to be more into the e-commerce field also. All right, great. So I'm going to also, are there any from the other panelists? Do you have any views on that? Any additional comments or feedback on the whole issue of e-commerce?
I would definitely like to add to what Adana said. And layering in the opportunities that e-commerce presents, particularly for women that are MSMEs, micro and small businesses in particular. A lot of these companies don't have an established route to market. They don't have a budget to get them to go into an overseas market directly and pitch their products or find overseas buyers. And so e-commerce gives them that opportunity. It gives them that visibility to a global market without necessarily having to leave their offices or leave their where they are. And that becomes particularly important and we go back to the dual roles that women hold in the home and at work. It supports the cottage industry, the traditional cottage industry, where a lot of these women are running their businesses out of their homes. And so they're able to build a sustainable business model based on e-commerce and accessing not just their local markets, but global markets. And I think that's the opportunity that comes out of e-commerce for that is incredible. In terms of women with technology, I definitely agree. Not enough women. We launched our Technology Innovation District Accelerator project in 2023. And we had 16 companies, and it's a project that was funded by the Inter-American Development Bank. And of the 16 companies, only one was led by a woman.
Wow.
And it was not for trying to get a better balance, because I think somebody noted earlier that a lot of our international donor community have pushed the gender agenda. And so we were looking for more women,
Yes.
just could not find them for the program. And so I think there is a lot more that we can do in that space. Earlier in last year, our ministry, the Ministry of Industry, Investment and Commerce, under which Jampro falls here in Jamaica, launched a Digital Jamaica project, and it's being executed by one of my sister agencies, Jamaica Business Development Center. But the Digital Jamaica project, and it's funded by the EU, is geared towards helping MSMEs and women in particular to digitize their businesses, because that's kind of a underlying foundation thing that has to happen for e-commerce, right? You have to have an inventory management system that is feeding into it, and you have to understand how to even run the e-commerce platform. And so there is a lot of work that is taking place now to give that kind of training, give that kind of support to MSMEs, so that individually the companies can leverage technology and leverage e-commerce. And I think that's important.
Yeah, yeah, like, I'm totally in agreement. I think with the e-commerce aspect, as you rightly stated, those micro enterprises, they have an opportunity. You know, you could just have a simple Facebook business page, yeah, showcasing your products. And that's it. You could have your Instagram page just showcasing your products, and it reaches somebody in
The
Australia.
world.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, and you're a female, and you know, there's some businesses that are just online, you know. So it I think e-commerce is something that it really can have a profound impact. And you know, we have been really been encouraging, you know, a lot of our female members to really utilize, well, the whole membership, I should say, but of course, to utilize these kind of platforms. And the world is, you know, it is moving in that direction with all the different social media platforms that can be utilized for, you know, for businesses. All right.
And by the way, it taps into the risk averse side of women as well, because I know a lot of women that maintain their 9 to 5 jobs,
Yeah.
and they start their businesses small, using online platforms to grow their business until they can make that switch from a day job to a business. So
Yeah.
it also gives that kind of support.
Look at that. Very good. All right. Nice. Okay, so let's turn to another topic. I want to talk about innovation. Yeah. And I want to throw out some 1 or 2 questions to Mrs. Agostani based on her background. I want to and I think she did started to talk about the innovation story of CJ Limited. So you know, Ms. Agostani, can you talk to us more about CJ Limited innovation journey? Yeah.
Sure. So I'd started CJ about 8 years ago. And my role, I came in as product development manager. And CJ had been around, well, it's now around for almost 88 years. So, sorry, it was around for about 80 years. So it means pretty much, I mean, it's been a successful company. It's a dinosaur in the industry, but not that many people knew about the firm or what exactly we did. And of course, we had a company right next door that was also called Citrus Growers Association, which we also get termed sometimes. So I really wanted to come in and just kind of give a facelift to the company. So we were able to work and bring in the different departments, so marketing, the quality, R&D, as well as the whole operations and logistics team to create the sort of product development team. And that really helped start the innovation process. So we had first started off by not just changing packaging, changing ingredients, and really focusing on our new vision, which was more about like sustainable health, wellness, environment. That was the kind of focus that we wanted to go on to, especially as in the Caribbean, where we don't have the healthiest diets, as well as a lot of the ingredients. We can kind of put what we want into because our regulations are not as strong as what you can put into. So we aligned everything with like the US market. And in terms of even a lot of our testing we did in the States to make sure we're compliant. And we basically started off with the oils, with the soaps. We changed the packaging of about 3 brands, and we had the perspective of all the different departments to help kind of create the new look that and feel that we wanted. We changed the oils, we changed some of the brands and the margarines, as well as one of our greatest success stories was launching into a whole new sector, which was cosmetics and skincare, when we launched the brand Cedrus Bay. That was really new to us. And the company had always had the idea to create like a more high-end niche sort of brands, because we're really mass market. We sell to most of the groceries, pharmacies, we have lots of different markets that we service, but we really wanted to showcase that the Caribbean can do something more than just our typical sort of products that we do. So the brand has done quite well. We're in several markets in the Caribbean, but of course trying to expand extra regionally, but that will take a lot of time to get there. So as well as one other new brand that we had launched was the Constance Estate infused oil, coconut oils, because everything we do is with coconuts. Because that's the name of the company originally, Coconut Growers Association. And we work with our parent companies, and we also wanted to showcase them a lot that we're not just a manufacturer, we're an agro-processor. So we work closely with our different farmers across Trinidad and different islands in the Caribbean and Guyana to be able to produce these sort of high-valued goods that you can produce from coconuts, what you would normally think is just something you do, coconut water, coconut oil. So there's a whole range of products that you can do from it. And it's really, the whole team and working together has allowed us to move forward in that direction.
As I do use the Citrus Bay products, so I'm very familiar. Yeah, I think what is what you indicated about the mere fact that people just automatically think, okay, you have coconut oil, you have the basic products, but I think what is great to hear from CJ Limited is the mere fact that with the rebranding, you had new products. You also thought about the having that niche market. Yeah, so it was really all these components in terms of your innovation strategy that really make it to what CJ Limited right now. And of course, it has become very, one of the most globally competitive in terms of the coconut industry, really providing that value added products on the market. So I definitely take note of that. So okay, great. So you talk about how successful it has been. Just in that journey itself, were there any challenges, issues that let's just say that you thought about this, like the same issue about being risk averse. Say, should I have really go into the Cedrus Bay line? Should I have really go in, those were there any issues that you would say? Because I just want to get an idea in terms of, because everybody say innovation, of course, is very important. It's very important. You have to continue rebrand yourself. You have to find various products and all of that. But I'm thinking that there are sometimes some challenges that you have to face. Yeah. So, Mr. Agustani, if it is that you want to talk about some of the challenges that you would have, or problems or issues that you would have encountered in that journey itself. Yeah.
Sure. I mean, there's so many challenges, so just like where to start. But I mean, I can speak specifically to like the Cedrus Bay brand, because that as well, even though we're a larger manufacturer, can also work this advice for entrepreneurs, because it basically was like a completely new brand, an area that we had no real expertise in. So it was a lot of research and trying to understand the market. So one of the biggest things, of course, as I mentioned, is having a niche product. So, and we want it to be something more high end. So as well as like falling into that sort of health, wellness, sustainable sort of sector that we wanted to get into, it's very expensive, especially for entrepreneurs, getting into it. It's just your volumes, which lead to your minimum order quantities would not be that high. So of course, when you're starting out, your pricing and your costing that leads to your pricing will be high. So that is one of the biggest challenges we face, is that we launched it and it did well. And that's what you always do when you first launch a product, it sells. But then after, within the product life cycle, you always start to see like a fall after a couple of years. Are people just not interested? How do you keep going? So of course, tying into the e-commerce, we also have an e-commerce platform, and that really did well in pandemic, but of course started to come down afterwards. So we really focus on the social media, getting the energy and excitement up. But the other thing that CJ also does is every year we have to launch, or we really try to launch at least 2 new SKUs. So your brand, you must always focus on having a lot of SKUs, and then really rationalizing it to see which ones do well over time. And then, of course, as you grow, then you're able to reduce the costing by getting more products within that same product or brand to help with that, as well as sharing different materials for different products within it. So there's so many different areas. And one of the things last year when we started to see the sales of the brand say dip, is that we had to look at the pricing, which of course it kind of hurts because you consider it to be a premium brand, but then you want it to grow really. So you want it to be a mass market brand at the end of the day, or you launch other SKUs. For example, we went into soaps, which were already really good at in other sectors, but we had never done a natural sort of soap. So we launched the soaps last year, and that helped kind of gain the traction back for the brand. So it's always going back and forth and different ideas and how you can keep it growing. But yeah, it's constant innovation, constant research. And well, even with today's topic, speaking about men versus women and like the gender roles, I mean, within our product development team, we obviously have both, well, we have multiple genders within the team to be able to help support and drive the different ideas that we have. But what is also really interesting is the different perspectives that you'd have. So I guess from a woman's perspective, or I mean, just based on stereotypical sort of gender roles in the past, is that working in the food sector, a lot more women might be more interested in cooking. I mean, not me personally, but it's in general. And so, for example, you'd get different sort of perspectives on what we can do, what would people buying this product would want to use it for, or even just generally as well. Like when you when we get information back from like different supermarkets, a lot of the purchasing decision making comes from maybe the woman and the family. So also in terms of design, packaging, ease of use, also the weight of the product, you want to make sure they can use it properly, yeah, carry it home. And even the pricing that I talked about is so important, because that is also a big important decision-making factor. But yeah, there's so many different areas that we talk about, but yeah, those are some of the interesting ones. And of course, I mentioned that we're in the beauty sector, so women's perspective, especially, we focus a lot more like on health and wellness and sustainability in the environment. That also impacts our purchasing power. So thinking about all those things, maybe women as well might be more interested or inclined, at least like right now. I mean, it can obviously change in the next couple of years, but that's just what we've seen based on our research.
Yeah, yeah. I like the mere fact that, what you stated in terms of, your team, comprised of the both, like both genders, men and women, participating, making sure that you encourage a culture where in CGA business, of encouraging women, to give their innovative ideas. Yeah. And I think that's very important in terms of having how we say, a culture that would encourage and push women to give innovative ideas. I feel as though sometimes, women tend to feel as though they can't present, or they can't, they don't have a voice in terms of when they want to, indicate that this can be done, or, think outside of the box. Because so I do believe that that is sometimes is a factor, in terms of why women, you don't see a lot of women, getting more into the business, because of the mere fact that we have not really, how would you say, push or encourage a innovative culture. Yeah. So great. So to the other panelists, what are your thoughts with regards to the same, Ms. Agustin, you talk about, the CJ Limited innovation journey, talk about, indicating, becoming very technical in terms of the pricing strategy and, looking at, different products. What are your thoughts in terms of the whole issue of innovation? What can be done, what can we do to encourage women to ensure that their innovative ideas are being heard. Yeah.
This is one of the places that I think government can play a big role.
Okay.
So we see that cry for innovative products from a perspective of an export promotion agency. So right now, for example, in Jamaica, we're preparing for Expo Jamaica 2025, which is April 3 to 6. And it's our biggest expo show. And it happens every 2 years. And JAMPRO works with the Jamaica Manufacturers and Exporters Association as their buyer recruitment partner. And so we talk to a lot of buyers, and a lot of what they're saying to us is what's going to be new, what products are going to be new on display. Some of these buyers are buyers that come year to year, and they want to see different products. And so we too are challenged to challenge our clients to come up with this innovation. But one of the areas I think our government has done really well is in supporting, again, small upcoming startups in product development. And we do it through two different ways. I mentioned the Jamaica Business Development Center, which is a sister agency earlier, that has incubators and they have spaces. So if you're in fashion, if you're in different industry, and ultimately a lot of women are the ones that benefit from these incubator spaces, and they're able to experiment and see what can be done. There's an agro-processing one where they can test things. We also have an entity called Scientific Research Council. And the Scientific Research Council helps you to create a consistent product. So imagine Gabrielle with her soap wanting to know what the formulation actually looks like. A lot of people create a product and they can't replicate it consistently, which is important, especially if you're selling a product consistently. People want to know that every time they take up this brand that they're buying the same product. SRC helps you to break down the formulation for that product so that as you start your manufacturing journey, you can be sure that you're providing that consistency. And they help with product innovation in that way. And it's a fully funded government entity with minimal costs to the companies that are going there. And so it's programs like that. There's an incentive program, not for women, for general, that you can apply tax credits to research and development, and it incentivizes research and development. So I think this is an area when it comes to innovation, just because you never know what the payout on innovation is going to be. Is it going to be a good product that people want, or is it something that's going to end up in a shelf and maybe not looked at again? And that taking away some level of that risk is what government should be doing to support businesses. So
very good point in terms of the government has a key role to play in terms of really pushing, the whole issue of innovation. I know that in Trinidad, the government they do have under TIPA, Adana, you could help me, in terms of they have the
Research and Development Fund.
right, research.
So that's
right.
it's administered
Again,
by the Ministry of Trade as well as the Trade and Investment
right.
Promotion Agency. Yeah.
I know it's general too, but still it is a facility that really speaks towards innovation. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it's just to take note of the mere fact that innovation it's a for you to become continuously globally competitive, you have to be on the heels of, really trying to push innovation out there. And so it's very important, yes, at the business level. Ms. Agostoni talk about, the company, they're looking at the pricing strategy, they're looking at their products, they're looking at niche market, yes, at the micro level, but then at the macro level to understand the importance of really pushing innovation at that level and, maybe carving out something for women, telling them you can feel reassured that there's an aspect out there for you. So yeah, so really good point. So I like also the mere fact, Mrs. Cox, you talk about having a consistent product. And I wanted to ask this question to Sardana, Miss Taylor, with regards to that whole issue, because I know you also come from the private sector. I know you from the private sector, yeah. And so, the mere fact that, how Mrs. Cox talk about, having a consistent product, and I feel as though, what are your thoughts in terms of, what how is trade can really help improve women access into the international markets? What are your thoughts on that? Yeah.
In terms of trade improving women's access to international markets.
Yes.
Well, I mean, trade is the basis of access to international markets, right? So for us, I think the question should be, how can we assist women in gaining access to international markets? What can we as policymakers, as private sector business owners, how can we improve our access as women to international markets? And that I would highlight under that's doing an excellent job with that is the She Trades program. It's a program that was formed or created by the UN International Trade Center in 2015 with the overarching goal of increasing access to international markets for women-owned businesses. There are hubs in different regions, and the hub for the Caribbean is located in Trinidad and Tobago. That hub was created in 2020, and it's really managed by the Trade and Investment Promotion Agency. Again, the general objective of the program is to increase the access to international markets for women-owned small and medium enterprises. So the program has been in existence as a hub in Trinidad for the last 5 years. And over the last 5 years, I would say that the program has been extremely successful in assisting women-owned businesses in gaining opportunities in different markets. In 2023, I believe the program supported the participation of 6 women-owned businesses on a trade mission to Barbados. They've supported several businesses at different markets throughout Trinidad and Tobago. Through the Trade and Investment Promotion Agency, they've executed trainings in export readiness, identifying and assessing export markets, and there have been over 22 companies that have benefited from that type of training. So I think programs such as She Trades are very important tools that women-owned businesses should take advantage of and use to their benefit. The EU also has several tools and several programs that could be tapped into that I would encourage women-owned businesses to take advantage of.
Yeah. So I'm very familiar with the She Trades. I know even outside of the trade mission to Barbados, as you know, TTMA, we also host a number of trade missions in collaboration with the Ministry of Trade and also with TIPA. And I know that there have been several women who participated in the She Trades program, participated in the trade missions, and all about giving them the opportunity to get access to a particular market, get a buyer out there. Yeah, so it really has been successful in terms of helping female businesses, to enter into the global market. All right, so great. I'm glad. And again, if those who are on the call, please note you can contact Adana or TTMA to get more information. I think sometimes also too, yes, I know there are other issues, but awareness is also a factor for persons to know that they have these programs that are out there, to assist you. And so we try our best to continue to disseminate information and to indicate to women entrepreneurs, business women, that you do have these facilities. Right. So great. So I am glad that we were able to talk about innovation, understanding e-commerce. So I want to pose this particular question, but I feel as though Mrs. Cox, throughout our discussion, you've been providing a lot of, information about the Jamaican experience and, what are some of the programs that has been there. And I know I wanted to specifically ask you about the female participation in the trade ecosystem, specifically the supporting structures. How has that evolved in Jamaica? Yeah.
So when you talk about support instructions, I assume you're talking about the entities that support a woman in
Yes.
business, a woman in trade. And so interestingly, in Jamaica, or government services in particular are very heavy, and
Yeah.
they're also each entity. So for example, Jamper is 73% women. And so when you look at that ecosystem, you do see a lot of to the top. Or Commissioner of Customs, for example, is a woman. And we have in Jamaica trade facilitation task force, because there are a number of elements, and so if we break it down and we think about, for example, ensuring that the business environment is right for trade, and that is a government and a private sector endeavor. And so we actually have a trade facilitation task force that is led by the Commissioner of Customs, as well as Mrs. Patricia Francis, who is one of my predecessors here at JAMPRO, but she also was the executive director of the International Trade Council. And she, in her own right, is a business woman and a woman in trade. And that task force has as its responsibility to identify where the challenges are in the government system that facilitates trade, and they do a lot of work in that space. We also have JAMPRO, which is a traditionally female-led organization as well. I think if I look back, my last two predecessors, at least for the last 15, 16 years, were women as well. And so it gives us that perspective. It gives us that ability to understand the particular nuances of a woman in business and a woman that is doing what needs to be done, and figuring out what our role can be in that regard. Or private sector industry associations, the equivalent of a TTMA, are also in large part led by women. So, or the executive director of our Jamaica Manufacturers and Exporters Association is also led by a woman. And I think even though there are no leanings or biases towards women in business, just the fact that we are where we are looking out for business in general, you can't but look out for each other. And so the structures that have emerged are heavily influenced without even any deliberate action by our own experiences and what we see. In terms of private sector, it's been interesting to see how private sector business women have emerged as leaders in both traditional and non-traditional areas. There's a particular client of ours that we joke about here, that every time we bring her to a trade mission with us with JAMPRO, she disappears. So we brought her to Guyana. We brought her to Guyana a couple of years ago, and she goes out and she does her own set of meetings, she does her own research, and proudly for the Guyana mission, 2 years later, she established her own business in Guyana. We carried her to Summer Fancy Food Show 2 years ago, and at the end of the food show, when everybody was packing up to go home, she was packing up to go to leave New York to go to Chicago to have more meetings with buyers. And so it's really, from my perspective, just a pleasure to see how we facilitate that. I spoke earlier about so many women entrepreneurs that don't have the opportunity to leave Jamaica, to leave Trinidad, to go out there and see what's available for them. And I think as government entities, JAMPRO and your equivalent in Trinidad, we have that special responsibility to make it easy for them to do that, to do all the planning around an event, or participation in an event, to plan business to business engagements. We work very closely, for example, with our foreign service officers, as I'm sure Adana does, to ensure that when we bring a mission into market, they're helping us to make sure that we business matchmake in the right way, and people maximize use of funds, because for a small business, it's very hard to carve out airfare and hotel, when you can't guarantee the results after that. And I think the business community depends on us as government entities to do our jobs right, to bring those results. When you think about the customs, when you think about trade facilitation, they're depending on us as government to make it as easy as possible to do business in our countries. Foreign service in particular has a huge role, again, led by a woman. Or Minister of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade is Senator the Honorable Kamina Johnson-Smith, and 19 of our overseas missions, we have 19 overseas missions, and 10 of them are led by women. And they help to create a framework for opportunities in those markets. They help us. We have a very strong economic diplomacy program where we meet with our foreign services offices every quarter. We brief them on investment opportunities that we're pushing, or companies that are looking for markets, and they help us do our jobs in those markets. And so they too are a part of the ecosystem. But even looking at the people that sit here in their head office, those are the people that are negotiating trade agreements. Those are the people that are liaising in CARICOM and quoted and representing our country and the interests of business people. So I think I can say for sure for Jamaica that the influence and potential of women to accelerate action on behalf of other women is extremely huge.
Beautiful, beautiful. So I'm hearing, like, with the Jamaican experience, there has been increased participation. There has been increased participation even at the different levels, So it really has been, continuously has been evolving. And, again, it's all about providing a lot more support. And I think when you do have women on high places, senior positions, they are able to, of course, understand, like, okay, when a female entrepreneur or a micro entrepreneur comes and explain my issues, I don't have enough capital, I don't have this, it's quicker to pick up on, like, okay, these are the issues, or my more work-life balance, I have to 3 days I have to be at the business, 2 days I have to be at home. So it's quicker to pick up. And in terms of developing policies that will take those kind of factors into consideration. So it's really great to hear what is taking place in Jamaica. And I think also to know what is at a regional level, in terms of what is I feel as though we need to have a lot more programs at a regional level, also to CARICOM level, that speaks to us really helping women. Yeah, I don't know what you guys think of that, but I do believe that I feel as though still there isn't a lot I feel as though we still need a lot more work to be done via policies to really encourage women in the business environment. Yeah. I do believe that the time has come where the mere fact that we cannot be underestimated. We really have a role to play, and we do have we could do provide a lot in terms of to the economy and to our trading environment. Yeah. So, okay, great. So I'm glad that we were able to, I know it's about almost close to an hour. We've been really having this panel discussion. And I did indicate towards the beginning of my session that we do have about, let's just say, 10 minutes with regards to if any of our attendees who are online, if they want to pose any question to our panelists, I will check in the chat box or even the I'm seeing any question and answer segment. So I'm seeing this from an autonomous attendee. How can we improve the shipping to encourage people to want to create a website? Like the shipping services is poor to each island. I'm not sure with regards to, I think I know that there are issues and concerns with regards to shipping, between the islands. Yeah, I've heard about the high cost. Sometimes you can't get a container load, all of these things, right? So I'm not sure which which panelists could be able to speak to us. I don't know, Miss Agostani, if it is that you have any based on the mere fact that you're the owner of the CJ Limited, from that perspective, if there are any issues would say with regards to shipping.
Well, I see, yeah, the question is twofold because it talks about creating a website and it talks about shipping. So of course
Right.
you have the thing of the small volumes, which you'd usually do through your website, or you mean on the large side, which would be like LCL or the full container load. But of course, as we know in Trinidad at the moment, we do have a lot of issues started ever since like about October last year when we've been having a lot of delays. I mean, all of the manufacturers have been experiencing this, and we've all been working closely with the TTMA and the different ministries to see, as well as the court, to see how this can be improved. And unfortunately, we're all just in the same boat at the moment. So, I mean, in terms of exporting, if you're talking about the large scale, you just really have to get those containers and book them in early to be able to export. Or one great thing, what I love about the Caribbean sort of community, as well as all the different manufacturers, even if you might be competitors, you still work together. And once you form those connections, which to be honest, we've done a lot through a lot of TTMA's events and networking events, we've been able to collaborate with other companies to be able to solve these shipping issues together. So for example, if you're a new business and you want to start shipping to a new market, but you might not have enough goods to send, you can collaborate, consolidate your shipment with another company. It can be, well, of course, it has to be in the same sort of sector that you're in because it needs to be conform to all the quality regulations to be able to ship together. So those are things you can do, and I definitely recommend collaborating with your other competitors, or say if you're an MSME, then you can work with other sort of people within your sector to be able to help ship. But in terms of a website that I can speak to, because we do have our e-commerce platform and we do ship regionally, extra regionally from it, is we do use, I mean, locally we use TT Post, but I mean, to ship outside of Trinidad, we'd use DHL. So that, I mean, they have different companies like that, DHL, FedEx, whatnot. And those are the best things to kind of get around a lot of those shipping issues. If you want to sell in smaller volumes, highly recommend it. And that's what we use.
Okay, great.
If I
So
could jump in, if
yeah,
I could
sure.
jump in there as well, and I think it ties back to the second question that person had around Caribbean Airlines as well. For e-commerce, and I think that's what they meant when they asked about creating a website, because that's when the question came up. I completely agree that the post and the DHL, the courier services, are an ideal option. A lot of companies, a lot of small companies in Jamaica they use the Jamaica Post for international shipping. The Jamaica Post actually allows shipping commercially up to, I think, £22. So it's ideal for smaller packages that are done via e-commerce. And I always encourage companies to become members of the industry associations. In this case, the GMEA does have an arrangement with one of the courier companies. I can't remember which ones, that when you're a member, you get like a discount with the courier companies, and there's that discount on a particular day of the week. So the courier companies have been very creative in making their pricing structure very accessible to small companies. And I think that's extremely important. We do also have the shipping challenges that Gabrielle spoke about. We have them here in Jamaica as well, shipping right across to the Caribbean. And so it is something that we have to, while we work on trying to solve that, we have to actively look for solutions in the meantime. And I think air cargo, where it's affordable, is a good alternative.
Thank you so much for those
I can
interventions.
also jump in here too, Joy. Just give a plug for Caribbean Airlines. They do offer a cargo service as well to the islands to which they operate. So it's something to consider once you know the schedule, and if you're shipping across samples, I would say it's a good starting point. But once you're looking at more regular, more consistent orders, you would want that predictability that I would assume a courier service like DHL or a similar company would offer.
Okay, good. Again, with women, we're very practical. We tell you as it is. Yeah. All right. So I'm seeing another question from the anonymous attendee. Where can you find information and requirements on the grants accessible to women in Trinidad and Tobago? So what I can tell you is that well, Dana would have speak towards She Trades program. So if it is that you want to get information about the She Trades program, you can contact her and also TTMA, and also, well, the key agency will be TIPA, right? That's the Trade and Investment Promotion agency, which has now consolidated all the three major agencies, which is Export TT, Invest TT, right? And also
And Creative TT.
Creative TT. So that's with the Export TT arm of TIPA, the She Trades is identified under them. So definitely that particular program, you can get some information. With regards to other programs that I know, I think, for example, you have the Research and Grant, which speaks towards innovation. It's not really specifically for women, but it is open to anyone. That again is under Export TT, which is an arm of TIPA. So to get all the list of grants is really with TIPA, TIPA, and also to some extent the Ministry of Trade and Industry. Yeah. So it's just for you to take note of that. And please note, you could always send an email to TTMA, and we could facilitate the process of getting that kind of information. Yeah. Right. So
Can I
yeah.
just add to that?
Yeah.
So yeah, just as you said, I mean, there are tons of grants available. They're not many that I'm aware of that are particular to women, but I mean, there are just so many grants out there for MSMEs, and especially like when dealing with the TTMA, like contacting anyone, like as Joy's on the call, or even, well, I sit on the membership committee. So we do work a lot with, well, we call them SMEs here, and we do have a lot of networking events where we also talk about the different grants. You can also find out from anyone on TTMA about the different grants that are available. But two that were really helpful for us, and I believe it didn't matter on the size of the company that we partook in last year, that we were given, that helped a lot with trade and exports, is that with Export TT. As you mentioned, we went on a trade mission with them that was fully sponsored by them to go to Panama last year, which was great once we applied and we got that grant. And then also with Carib Export also offers a lot of grants as well. And with that one, we were able to go to the CL show in Paris, and many other SMEs went on that, and they were all on the routes, and it was all across the Caribbean. Many different companies got to go to that. So it's great. They do have those opportunities. You just need to look for them. And of course, as apply for them, but look for them through TTMA.
Yeah, I would say, just to echo what Gabrielle has said, Caribbean Export is an excellent resource. There are many grants available throughout the year for participation in a number of different trade shows and different activities. I would encourage everyone here, once you're on LinkedIn, follow them. They post different opportunities there. You reach out to them to get clarification, and they're very happy to assist. Many times their activities are coordinated through our Trade and Investment Promotion Agency. So we would be the agency that's responsible for getting the information out in Trinidad and Tobago. So first point of contact, I would say, is liaise with either me or Joy as TTMA. Get us as your point person there, and once we have information, we will share it out.
Thank you so much for those interventions. I've seen a question here from Ms. Tanya Cameron. The shipping cost is very expensive in Jamaica. How is JAMPRO assisting small businesses? I don't know, Mrs. Cox, if you have any feedback on that.
Sure, no problem. So I'm going to assume that Tanya is an exporter or company looking to export. And so Jumper has an entire division that is focused on export. So similar to TIPA, we are both an investment and export agency. The shipping costs, as I mentioned, with all the challenges that they're having, yes, that continues to be a big challenge. Air courier is an alternative that companies can look at depending on what their product is. In terms of JAMPRO services, we have a couple. The first one is buyer recruitment. I spoke about Expo Jamaica earlier, and we encouraged all our companies to get involved in Expo Jamaica, because when we bring in buyers for Expo Jamaica, the Expo has 2 full days of buyer meetings, which we coordinate, and we make sure that every company that wants to meet with a particular buyer gets an opportunity to meet with a buyer, if not during the Expo, after the Expo. And that is perhaps one of our biggest selling points, is to introduce exporters to buyers. And that is done in events like Expo Jamaica here in Jamaica, but also overseas. We bring our companies overseas with us. So for example, in another 2 weeks, we're doing a trade mission, an export mission into Barbados, Grenada, and Antigua, specifically looking at non-food manufacturing, but also we have tech clients, and our tech clients came to us and say, all right, we want to be a part of this as well. So our tech companies are coming with us as well. So companies that are interested in particular markets should reach out to us, and we'll do our best to connect them. We're also going to CL Canada. Gabrielle mentioned CL Paris, which is the bigger show, but we're going to CL Canada, and we're bringing 10 companies with us, doing a whole Jamaica pavilion there. On the facilitation side, we offer business advice as to what a company should be doing in order to make themselves ready to get into export markets. We also work with the company to navigate government processes. And if there are any particular challenges that they're having with any entity, we advocate on their behalf and try to resolve those issues. So, I mean, I could continue, but perhaps what I should do is ask Tanya to reach out to us at JAMPRO. We are online at dobusinessjamaica.com. You can email us at info@dobusinessjamaica.com, and you can always visit our offices in Kingston at 18 Trafalgar Road.
Yes, Tanya. So contact JAMPRO. They have a lot of services. Yes. Okay, so please note, I know there were some other questions. What can be done is that you could send the questions to TTMA, and we could always send it out to the various panelists afterwards, and they could respond to you also too directly. Yeah. All right, so just want to say that we've come to the end of this particular session, and I just want to take at this point to allow each panelist to just give their own closing remarks. Tomorrow is really International Women's Day. I know there are a lot of activities that are taking place, and we still, there are a lot of progress has been done, a lot of advancement in terms of women in trade. And I just want to hear your closing thoughts in terms of, you know, um, again, the theme, and where do we see ourselves, Trinidad, the region, Jamaica, what are your thoughts? Yeah, if there's a specific issue that you feel it's burning in terms of trade, women in trade, no problem. Yeah, so anyone could start.
All right, let me kick it off. I would say in closing that it's important that we become a part of a network of whether it's like-minded women or just generally associations or working with the government entity that or entities, because sometimes you end up working with more than one. But it's very important that you go out there, you network, you understand who can help you and how they can help you, and then you leverage the resources that are important to you. And that is how we start to accelerate action for women.
Love it, love it. So networking, yeah, supporting each other, love it. Yeah.
Sure, I can go next. So there are just kind of two areas that I wanted to speak about because, of course, like trade is just so important from the business perspective as an entrepreneur or being a woman in an established business. So I mentioned at the beginning when I first started speaking was about highlighting women's stories. So I really wish, like as a community, we would do that more often. I mean, we do it a lot on International Women's Day, but throughout the year. So if any other business people are here, like highlighting it during the year on your social media or different stories, as well as like even speaking to different schools, like other women, like who are young girls, like kind of mentoring them to get into these different sectors of trade because they're just so interesting and like where we're moving towards. So really would love to see like more women participate as well as within the companies, kind of foster that sort of environment where you can share the ideas. You spoke about innovation, as well as kind of making women in general feel comfortable about discussing new topics. I mean, I mentioned about the ideas, but really just kind of as well as like moving in the company. Say, for example, you work in HR marketing or you're more interested in operations. There's just so much area for development, and like always know that wherever you are, your position in life, you can always change, move fields. And yeah, I highly recommend going into like the trade sectors. Okay.
Beautiful, beautiful. I think it's very important for persons to know that there are success stories out there, and we need to really, show young women that, you can get into the area of business, and the success stories will go a long way in really fostering women, in advancing women in trade. Yeah, Adana?
Yeah, no, what I would like to highlight is the importance of flexibility. Sometimes as women, we get comfortable very quickly in particular roles or in particular situations, and it might feel uncomfortable for us to look at something outside of that. But once you understand that there is a certain level of growth that can come with being flexible, I think there are a lot more doors that can open up to you. So for all women-owned businesses, women out there that might feel comfortable in their current position, don't be afraid to try something else, to be a bit more flexible, and to understand that in that flexibility, you could attain a certain level of growth as well.
I like it. I like the mere fact that, you're indicating the flexibility, don't become, don't, you may be seeing, like, I remember a story of a particular female entrepreneur last year when I had a woman in trade webinar, and it's a woman who she makes sauces, pepper sauce, and she was indicating, like, so many issues came at her. She had a divorce, this was taking place, and she just pushed through. And she didn't allow the risk that came along with it, so many issues that could come along to like, stop it. And now, right now, she is one of the number one sauce manufacturer. I mean, pepper sauce manufacturers. I'm talking about mother-in-law. Yeah. So it's just really how persons are, you may think that that you cannot do it, you're not able to do it, but please note that there's that you have to be flexible. You have to be willing to, to open. Don't be risk adverse as women. And yeah, we keep on progressing. We keep on progressing. And I believe as the year to come, more years to come, I do believe we will see a lot more women in trade. Yeah. So thank you so much for all those closing remarks. I just want to thank, of course, the panelists, but I also want to thank the attendees for really being part and for staying for throughout this particular session. Please look out for more sessions like these. I'm really thankful that I was able to get our Jamaican counterparts, Mrs. Cox, and even attendees from Jamaica. I think, as I said, this is going to be the beginning in terms of, having these more kind of sessions where we have, sessions with partners with other regional organizations. Yeah. And I think it's very important to know that all of us, as women, we are also facing the issues, but, regionally, internationally. So please look out for more sessions like these. Again, I want to thank Nutrimix, who is a sponsor for this particular webinar. Thank you so much. And happy International Women's Day in advance. Yeah, wherever you are, Adana in London, Mrs. Cox in Jamaica, and all my Trini people, Mrs. Agostani. Happy International Women's Day. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a good one. Yeah.
Thank you. Same to you,
And
Joy.
thank
Have a great
you.
one.
Take care, everyone. Bye.
Bye bye, everyone. Thank you.